Today we're jumping into a story that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a movie. We're talking about one of the biggest, most complicated corruption schemes in history. And the crazy part? It all got uncovered at a car wash. So picture this, it's March 2014. Federal police in Brazil's capital, Brasilia, they raid this little gas station, a car wash called Posto da Torre. They thought, it was just a standard run-of-the-mill money laundering bust. But what they stumbled upon? Whoa. It was the very first thread of a conspiracy that would end up toppling presidents, throwing billionaires in jail, and just shaking an entire continent to its foundations.
So how in the world does that happen? How could one single car wash unravel the largest corruption scandal in a continent's history? That's the huge question we're going to unpack today. And to figure it out, we've got to start right at the beginning.
Okay, so let's start with Section 1, a routine car wash. This is where it all began. The spark that, ignited a total firestorm. In Portuguese, they call it Operação Lava Jato, Operation Car Wash. At first, the whole investigation was focused on this one guy, a money changer named Newton Ishii, who was working out of the car wash. But as the police started digging through his books, they realized something was off. The money trail wasn't leading to the usual suspects, petty criminals or drug gangs. No, it was leading straight to the top, to the executive suites of Petrobras, Brazil's massive state-owned oil company. This is the crown jewel of their economy. And just like that, a small-time case exploded into a massive national issue. And that brings us to Section 2, the corruption machine. Now we're going to pull back the curtain and deconstruct this multi-billion-dollar fraud. So how did this whole thing actually work? Well, what investigators found was a system that was just breathtaking, both in how simple it was and how incredibly audacious.
What's really mind-blowing is how simple the scheme was at its core. It's basically 3 steps. Step 1, huge construction companies would intentionally overbid on massive contracts with Petrobras. Step 2, all that extra cash, and we're talking billions here, gets siphoned off and laundered through this web of shell companies, using guys just like the one at the car wash. And finally, step 3, that now clean cash gets paid out as bribes to politicians and Petrobras execs, and what do? They approve even more inflated contracts. It was a perfect self-fueling loop of corruption. And get this, the organization behind it was just incredible. One of the main players, this construction giant called Odebrecht, they didn't just pay bribes on the side. No way. They had an entire department for it. A whole division with its own budget, its own accounting system, and they called it the Department of Structured Operations. Can you believe that? This wasn't just some shady backroom deal. This was corruption as an official corporate strategy. And the sheer scale of it, it's just hard to wrap your head around. $788 million. And listen, you have to remember, that's just the documented bribes from one company in 12 countries. The real number is almost certainly way, way higher.
And that's because this was never just a Brazilian problem. Odebrecht had basically exported its business model. Which brings us to Section 3, a continental conspiracy. This thing was designed to spread from the very beginning. Just look at the pattern here. The scandal went all the way to the top, to the absolute highest levels of power across Latin America. In Peru, 3 former presidents were caught up in this. One of them, Alan Garcia, tragically took his own life right as police were showing up to arrest him. In Brazil, you had former President Lula da Silva imprisoned, and the presidents of Ecuador and Panama also caught in the web. This was a systematic takeover of democratic institutions across an entire region.
So, the fallout from this massive conspiracy was, it was nothing short of a political earthquake. And that's our Section 4. The reckoning was here, and it was about to completely reshape Latin America's political landscape. But what did this all actually cost in the real world? In Brazil alone, the price tag is estimated at a staggering $40 billion. And that's not just some abstract number on a page, that is a colossal theft from the public.
And right here is where that cost becomes just painfully clear. Every single dollar that got funneled into an offshore bank account or spent on a luxury mansion, that was a dollar that wasn't spent on building schools or funding hospitals or providing clean water and decent roads. It was a direct transfer of wealth from essential public services straight into private pockets.
But there was a reckoning, and it was unlike anything anyone had seen before. The entire system got shaken, from the bottom all the way to the very top. We're talking nearly 280 people convicted, a sitting president impeached, a beloved former president jailed. Odebrecht, the company at the heart of it all, was forced to pay a record-breaking $3.5 billion fine. But maybe the deepest, longest-lasting consequence was the crisis of faith in democracy that it left behind. And yet, in the middle of all that chaos, there was this glimmer of hope, a feeling that something fundamental had actually changed. As one person put it, for the first time in Brazil's modern democratic history, the untouchable elite were being held accountable for their crimes. Accountability. It was finally possible. All of this leaves us with our final section, an ongoing legacy. So after all that, what did we learn? What are the big takeaways from what might be the greatest fraud in history? Well, the lessons here are absolutely crucial, especially today. First, we learned that this wasn't about a few bad apples. It was about institutional capture, where entire systems get compromised. We saw just how easily criminals can use the global financial system to their advantage. The whole scandal proved that our best defense is strong, independent institutions. Courts, a free press, and citizens who are paying attention. But it also taught us a really hard lesson, that rooting out this kind of deep, systemic corruption, well, it can be incredibly messy and politically destabilizing.
Look, the investigation that started in a simple car wash proved that no one, not even the most powerful people, is above the law. It's a powerful warning for sure, but it's also a source of hope. But it leaves us with this one vital question for the future. Okay, we now know we can expose a massive fraud after it's happened. But what's it gonna take to stop the next great fraud before it even begins?